Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. In our previous videos, we looked at techniques that improve the reasoning ability of a single prompt, such as chain of thought, self-consistency, tree of thoughts, and react. But in many real-world applications, the problem isn't reasoning. The problem is trying to make the model do too many things in a single prompt. For example, suppose we ask an LLM to organize an entire birthday party using one instruction. The model may generate an answer, but it will often be generic or miss important details. A better approach would be to first decide the guest list, then the budget, then the venue, then the food, and finally the activities. This idea of breaking a large task into smaller tasks and solving them one by one is known as prompt chaining. It is a technique where the output of one prompt becomes the input for the next one. Instead of solving everything at once, the task is divided into multiple smaller prompts which work together to produce the final result. This helps language models handle complex tasks in a more structured and reliable way. So as you can see, this is the entire pipeline followed by prompt chaining. So first we take our complex task and break into simpler ones. And each task is focused on by a single prompt. So we take our first prompt for the first step or task. The output it generates is used for the next task as an input, and we continue this chain finally till we reach our final result. So these are a few examples of common types of prompt chaining. First one is sequential chaining, which is like the generic one where we have a task which we break down into simpler ones and follow a normal chain to reach to the final result. So like example is an article writing where we first generate an outline, we draft it, then we edit or make any particular changes in it, and then we get the final article as an output. Second one is conditional chaining, where the next step or the next task depends on the AI's output or decision from the previous one. So, for example, if we are doing review analysis and the review for a particular product or movie is positive, then we highlight its strength. On the other hand, if it's negative, then we suggest some improvements for that movie or the review. Thirdly, is looping chaining. So for example, if we have 10,000 documents and we want a summary for each one of them. So rather than creating different prompts for each of them, we just reuse the prompt again and again for all n of them. That is 10,000 in this case. This is known as looping chaining. So here is a common prompt chaining example which is taken from the research paper Prompt Chaining or Stepwise Prompt Refinement in Text Summarization. The results that we discuss further are also from this paper. So here, as we can see in prompt chaining, for text summarization, we follow three-step process. So firstly, we take a draft, like simply we draft the summary which we want, and this drafted summary is being passed as a prompt for the second step where we ask the LLM to critique it and find the weaknesses or places where it can improve. After critiquing on it, then we take the draft as well as the critical points and then pass it to LLM to refine its response in resulting in us getting a better summary than before. So the question is, why does this approach work so well? So the first point is that we are breaking the complex task into simpler ones. So the model is able to manage them and solve each of them at an individual basis, resulting in focusing on one step at a time, resulting in reduction of errors. Thirdly, also as we are passing the output from the one LLM response as an input to the other, the context is being preserved. And as the entire flow is very transparent, we are able to easily debug and understand where our model is lacking or where it made the error. So people generally get a lot confused between prompt chaining and chain of thought. So basically in prompt chaining, we have a problem which is connected to multiple prompts. So, like we break the problem into simpler ones and solve each step via single prompt. So that's prompt chaining, and it's very useful for tasks which have complex workflows like article writing, content creation, or writing a research paper. On the other hand, in chain of thought, we are solving the entire prompt using one single problem via using step-by-step reasoning. So all the reasoning that we are generating happens inside a single response, unlike prompt chaining. And as you already know, this method is very useful for tasks like mathematical, logic, and puzzles. So these are the results which we discussed from the previous paper. So they compared prompt chaining and stepwise prompting. So like in prompt chaining, we do it in three different prompts, that is drafting, critique, and then refinement. In stepwise prompting, we follow the entire process in one single prompt. So basically, for baseline, they took a single response on GPT-4 of just summarizing the article, and they compared with stepwise prompting and prompt chaining. So a win in this case means that the evaluator preferred the response obtained after stepwise prompting, or the method which we are taking, and loss means that the evaluator preferred the baseline response. So as you can see, stepwise prompting didn't perform as well as prompt chaining. And in GPT-4, in case of GPT-4, prompt chaining was able to achieve 77 wins and only 9 losses compared to 53 wins and 18 losses of stepwise prompting. So even though this approach works pretty well, it has a few limitations. Firstly, the pipeline is pretty big, so it's very difficult to maintain the context. Secondly, it will take a lot of time to generate a response. So, like most of our methods, it's not very useful for real-time applications. Thirdly, if at any initial stage the model makes an error in generating an output and we are not cautious, then that error can propagate forward. So overall, prompt chaining is one of the most practical prompting techniques because it allows us to transform large complex tasks into smaller and easier subtasks. And that's going to be it from my side for this video. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know how I can improve further. Thank you guys for watching.